Well, hello and welcome all you wonderful people out there in YouTube land to the Texas Special YouTube channel. In this fourth installment of the Model Railroading 101 video series, we take a look at another topic that I have touched on in product reviews and in operating sessions and whatnot, is DCC versus DC. Now, this is a DC transformer, okay? This is a MRC Rail Power 1370, and this is a digital command control, or DC, Digitrax DCS52 Zephyr. I mostly use this MRC transformer to power the switches on the railroad, and whenever I get around to installing lighting on the railroad, that's going to be this guy too. The DCS 52 is used exclusively for running trains. So the pros and cons of, we'll start off with DC, mostly because pretty much everybody in the hobby starts out with DC, with very few exceptions. So DC offers simplicity of control. You have a hot and a negative, positive, ground, however you want to word it. You plug in the wire to the track, or affix the wire to the track, however you want to do it, soldering it to the rail, plugging into a terminal track, however you want to do it, and you run it to the transformer. Now, just like your starter train set that you had as a kid, or you might possibly have now because you're just getting started in the hobby, the more you turn the throttle on this transformer, the faster the train goes. The more you decrease the throttle, the slower it goes until it ultimately stops. With DC, if you have multiple locomotives on the track at the same time, they will both respond to the throttle input the exact same. With respect to gear ratio, and if one's got a decoder and the other one doesn't, obviously the one with the decoder is going to take a little bit more voltage to get going. Aside from that, in principle, they're both going to operate exactly the same. There's no fine control of lighting features. There's no fine control of sound features. So if you have DC and you want to run multiple trains, you're going to need to install a block system with double pole, double throw switches to kill and fire up different portions of the railroad for independent control. You're going to have to use use insulated rail joiners with multiple areas of the railroad still in separate blocks, but on separate transformers and throttles. And it's just, the more complex you want your railroad to be, the more complex the wiring is going to be with DC. If you have a simple 4x8 setup and you're just running trains, one train around at a time, then you're fine with DC. I could realistically get away with DC on the Stars Hollow Railroad because I don't usually run multiple trains at one time, but I like the sound capability of DCC. Therefore, that requires me to run DCC if I want to get my full bang for my buck. As I mentioned, the more I turn this with DC, the faster it goes, and if there's more than one locomotive on the track at the same time, they're both going to respond to the throttle input the same. So I have two locomotives on the track. These are DCC equipped locomotives. They do have a dual mode decoder, which means that it is a DCC decoder that will allow the locomotive to operate in a DCC environment with a specific address and respond only to commands addressed or sent to that specific address, but will also operate in a conventional DC environment. So here we go. Turn the throttle. And you see they both run. I have no independent control of these guys. They're both going to do what they want to do. Now we've swapped over to the DCS, and you can see there I have a 2286 punched in. We'll fire up the track. With DCC, you have a constant voltage fed through the rail. So unlike this, the voltage is regulated by this throttle. The more you turn it, the more you increase it, the higher the voltage goes. The more you decrease it, the lower the voltage goes, until ultimately the throttle is completely closed and there is absolutely zip for electricity going through the rail. With DCC, you have a constant 14 to 18 volts going through the track at all times. So if the rail power 1370 was hooked up to the rail with the throttle closed, I could put a penny on the track and it wouldn't do anything. Not till I started increasing the throttle. If I did that with this DCS 52 hooked up, the rail is live right now. There is power flowing through there. So something to keep in mind with DCC versus DC is, even though the engines are stopped, if the DCC system is on, you have to be mindful of your track status. If you're going to do something that could possibly cause a short in the track, kill the track. Otherwise, have it on. The big advantage with DCC is control and simplicity. All you need for a basic railroad that does not have reversing loops or Y tracks or turntables, we're talking your standard basic starter railroad, where there's no need to worry about reverse polarity, is 2 wires. Plug in here through a little screw terminal, straight to the track, and obviously for improved electrical, for electrical conductivity, you do a feeder every 2 to 4 feet. Some guys even go so far as to put a pair of feeder wires on each individual section of track. Real talk, this is the only feeders to the entire layout, and everything runs fairly well so long as I keep the track clean. You have independent control of locomotives. You can have multiple locomotives on the same track or set of tracks controlled by your DCC system, and only one locomotive will respond to a given command. So you see here I have the 2286 punched in. So we'll circle around. We'll put the 2286 in reverse. And you see there that number 802, that GP20, is just sitting there. It's not doing anything because it hasn't received any commands yet. So we'll punch in 802. And now we have it moving independently. Meanwhile, this guy is still rolling back there. Now remember, in DC they respond the same. So this right here is not possible in DC without rewiring motors. I can speed up that GP20 and stop it while that switcher in the background there keeps doing its thing independent of what I do with the GP20. Additionally, DCC allows you refined control of, in addition to speed and direction and things like that, you also have fine control of, you can activate bells, whistles, rev up or rev down the prime, the diesel engine sounds. You can do all that with DCC. You can't do that with DC. Another interesting feature that you can accomplish with DCC versus DC is you can consist engines so that you have fine control of a set of locomotives doing the same thing, which we will demonstrate here in just a minute. So if you want to consist or lash up or MU, multiple unit, 2 or more locomotives together in DC, you just put the locomotives you want to run together on the track at the same time, couple them up, and there you go. It's that simple. If you want to do it with DCC, there's an additional couple of steps you got to do. So I have the 2286 punched in. We'll hit the locomotive key. We will hit right here where it says MU above this A key. Select that. Now it's flashing. It's waiting for me to put in a locomotive. So I'm going to type in 802. Now that I have the locomotive selected I want, I'm going to hit the MU plus, and it is consisted. So now with these 2 locomotives consisted, if I want to run them in reverse, there they go. Same thing with forward. There you have it. And to unconsist them, we will hit the locomotive key, MU 2286, MU minus on the B key, and now the 2 engines are once again separate. So uncouple it real quick. And if I go back and punch in the 802 one more again, you see there, they are separate locomotives once more under independent control. If you're buying locomotives that are new in HO scale or N scale or any scale, you can buy command equipped and sound equipped locomotives from the factory out of the box, no problem. If you are upgrading a railroad or you're starting out with like your starter set, then you're likely going to need to buy digital command control decoders for each separate locomotive, program them, whether it's a new out-of-the-box engine or a locomotive you had to start out with, and you're upgrading it to DCC. Program the address you want for that specific locomotive, in addition to buying a DCC command system. So to get the independent control of DCC, that requires a little bit of investment. If you're starting out, that's fine. You're going to be buying trains and whatnot anyway. If you've been in the hobby for a while, for a lot of guys, depending on how big your collection is, that could be a big pill to swallow. Me, when I started working on this, I'd been out of HO scale for 15 years. So there wasn't really any HO scale in the house to begin with, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But if you've been in the hobby for a long time, I know a couple of guys have been in the hobby for longer than I've been alive, and they still run DC, but then again, given the size of their collection and whatnot, it makes sense. So while DCC has the major positive of independent control, being able to consist locomotives, being able to run multiple trains on the same stretch of track with independent control, and of course fine control of your sound features, it can require a substantial investment depending on how big of a railroad you're talking about, if you're already established in the hobby. Now, this is not strictly an HO or N-scale problem. Well, no, I shouldn't say problem. Consideration. This also applies to O-gauge. I've only been using command control on my O-gauge railroad for the last 5 years, maybe 6. I'm a recent convert to command control in O-gauge, and same thing. O-gauge trains, command control O-gauge trains will run in traditional AC environment. You don't have the fine control, you don't have independent control, but you still get to run the train. Unlike your traditional N or HO scale DC throttle, the O-gauge train set transformer does have a bell and whistle button, so you at least have control of the bell and whistle. But it requires a substantial investment. I've got probably almost $2,000 worth of electronics controlling the O-gauge railroad, and there's still other stuff I would like at some point to get my hands on to help run the O-gauge railroad a little bit better. But there's pluses and minuses to each one, command control versus conventional, and I hope this video helped explain some things. And if you still have some questions, then feel free to throw a comment in there. I'm still figuring out this DCC thing. I'm a little bit better versed in the MTH, DCS, and Lionel Legacy and TMCC, but I'm still figuring out the quirks of the DCC. I'll attempt to answer whatever questions as best as I can. Thank y'all for watching. I hope you found this video to be entertaining and informative. Texas Special out.